What's up guys, my name is Ace, and this morning in XDefiant we've got a really solid update. And this one includes a bunch of bug fixes, some key ability adjustments, and our very first weapon balance pass since the launch of the game. So in today's video, I'm going to be diving deep into these patch notes and showing you guys whenever possible before and after when it comes to these changes, rather than just reading the patch notes out for you guys. I want to actually show you what changed whenever viable. But let's first start this off with some of the bug fixes. The first thing is they fixed the delay in reloading, swapping weapons, or deploying devices when players were rapidly tapping the fire and ability buttons together. On top of that, for anybody that's using a speed hack in the game, which has popped up from time to time, I haven't run into one yet, but I have seen a bunch of clips online of people running into speed hackers. But with this, they implemented a mitigation to this where it will just lock those players in place and they'll be unable to move. And hopefully that's just a real-time mitigation in the meantime while they investigate that account before banning that account. But next, let's get into the faction adjustments. And the first thing they pointed out is they actually changed the name of GSK. It seems there may have been a legal issue with GSK, so now they're calling it GS Commando. I'm still going to be calling it GSK though. Then after that, something we've all been waiting for since the launch of Season 1 is they brought back the ability to shoot the Spiderbot off your face. So if a Spiderbot attaches itself to your face, what you want to do is look straight downward. You want to look all the way down and then fire your gun, and that should destroy the Spiderbot more often than not. With really slow rate of fire guns, it's not a guarantee that that will shoot it off your face. But now we once again at least have some form of a counter once that attaches to your face. And just a reminder with this was actually an unintended bug that they fixed, and that's why we haven't been able to do this since the launch of Season 1. But they decided to bring this back until they get a more long-term adjustment out for the Spiderbot. They are still planning on doing a rework, and they seem to suggest that they're going to have some kind of a quick time event to get rid of that Spiderbot off your face. But in the meantime, at least, we have this as our counter to that Spiderbot. And I'm personally just really glad to see this. It really sucked having no recourse once that Spiderbot was attached to your face. The only thing you could do was hope a teammate would shoot it off your face. Whereas now at least you have some agency once that has happened. On top of this though, with the Spiderbot, they did fix an issue where Spiderbots were ignoring victims that were previously targeted by a Spiderbot deployed by the same person. So now they'll no longer ignore those players. So in a way, you may get targeted a bit more often by the Spiderbots if you just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time consistently. But now we at least have the ability to counter that again. Next up, for the Echelon faction, we saw some more tuning to the Intel suit. But before we get into the details of that, today's video is sponsored by Manscaped with the latest version of the lawnmower trimmer. This is the special edition Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra in the white hot color. And this is by far the best looking trimmer in my collection. With this one, it's got the next gen dual skin safe blades. So for your general trimming, we have the updated trimmer blade with longer, wider, and rounded teeth that cut through hair with ease. And then when you're done with that, you can easily swap that trimmer blade out for the foil blade, which will give you a sleek and bare finish. And that's not all. This new white hot special edition trimmer also has all the same great features I love with my previous lawnmower trimmer, like the dual temperature LED light so you can clearly see what you're working on, a robust and rechargeable lithium-ion battery with a 3-level battery life indicator, and finally, it's waterproof so you can use it in the shower or rinse it off in the sink for a quick and easy clean. So whether you're looking to add this special edition trimmer to your collection or join the 10 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped for their general grooming needs, head over to manscaped.com and grab yours today. Also, when you use my code TXA20 at checkout, that'll give you 20% off your order as well as free international shipping. Big thanks to Manscaped for sponsoring this video. So getting back to it, with Echelon's Intel suit ability, which is that wall hack ability that you have, the first thing they did to this is it now will pulse every 4 seconds instead of every 3 seconds. So not only do we have a bit more of a gap between each pulse, this also means we now only have 5 pulses per use rather than the 6 that we had pre-patch. And then on top of that, enemies will only be highlighted for 1 second now instead of 2.7 seconds like we saw previously. And when we take a look at before and after here, you can see before, when that enemy gets pinged, you can actually see them highlighted almost until the next ping is already happening. And therefore, previously, when this was active, you could just consistently track people throughout basically the entire duration of your Intel suit ability with almost no downtime in between those sweeps. Whereas now, post-patch, you can see that enemy isn't highlighted for nearly as long. It's only 1 second now, so you have to be a lot more on the ball as far as paying attention to where those enemies are. And this also means that if that player's moving around a lot, you're not going to be able to track them nearly as effectively, and therefore, that's actually a solid way to counter the Intel suit now. It's just, if you notice that you're getting pinged by an Intel suit, try to get yourself moving. If you're just sitting in the same corner you were sitting in when you got pinged, well, they're going to know exactly where you are. But if you're on the move, it's going to be harder for them to track your movements now. So there we go, that's the intel suit adjustments, and honestly, I think those are solid adjustments. It's not what I was initially hoping for with this. My initial hope was that only the user of the intel suit would gain the wall hack ability, whereas his teammates would get the minimap ping from that ability. But after seeing these adjustments, I can live with this as well. I think this is much more reasonable, and I like the fact that as long as you're staying on the move, it's going to be much more difficult for them to track exactly where you are, even with this intel suit active. Now finally, in the faction section of the patch notes, they mentioned that some abilities such as Firebomb, Digital Ghillie Suit, and the Biovita boost, they weren't always activating, or occasionally they would stop working entirely, and they mentioned that this should now be fixed. And that's good news. This was quite frustrating to run into. With the Firebomb, you could hit the button over and over and over again, and the animation would play, but it wouldn't actually use the ability. Or sometimes with those abilities mentioned, that ability would just gray out at some point throughout the match, and you couldn't use that ability for the rest of the match unless you swapped factions and then swapped back, but then at that point you reset your ultimate progress. So yeah, obviously a frustrating bug, and it looks like they have that one taken care of. After that, for maps, they just fixed an issue on Times Square where people could get through the starting gates early. For game modes, they updated the playlist screen, so now all of the available game modes will display on the same screen, which is great because previously TDM was actually hidden. You had to scroll over all the way to the right to see TDM. Now it's all visible there, so nobody will miss that. They also added menu text clarifying that the bronze rank will unlock at the first victory. They fixed an issue that was displaying the little padlock icon on ranked rewards, despite players earning them fair and square. And now let's get into the weapon balancing adjustments here. And let's start this off in the assault rifle category. With the M4A1, they increased our short range damage from 17 up to 18. And with this, while it doesn't change the number of shots to kill against a regular enemy in that damage range to the body, it does now make it so you need 2 headshots mixed in with body shots for a 5-shot kill, whereas pre-patch, you had to hit 3 headshots mixed in with 2 body shots to get a 5-shot kill, which was obviously much more difficult and much less likely to ever occur, so it's a lot more consistent with headshots now. And then on top of this, against Phantom players, in that maximum damage range, it's now a 7-shot kill against Phantoms instead of an 8-shot kill like we saw pre-patch. And that gives us a much more reasonable time to kill potential against those Phantom players when using the M4A1. But then after that, the MDR got some much needed buffs. The first thing is in that maximum damage range, they increased our damage from 17 all the way up to 19. So this was more of an increase than we saw with the M4. And what this means now is you only need 1 headshot up close mixed in with body shots for a 5-shot kill. Previously, you needed 3 headshots, so that now makes this gun really good with headshots. You definitely want to try to mix that headshot in with the MDR. It makes a big difference now. And then on top of that, just like with the M4, against Phantom players, it's now going to be a 7-shot kill against Phantoms up close, whereas previously it was an 8-shot kill, so it's significantly better against Phantom users. In fact, it's one of the better options now in the assault rifle category for countering Phantom players, especially because we're also getting a nice headshot benefit against Phantom players. Now all you have to do is mix 1 headshot in for a 6-shot kill against those players. Whereas previously, a 6-shot kill required 3 headshots mixed in with body shots against Phantom users. So not only is it killing Phantom players more effectively with just body shots, it's also killing them significantly more effectively if you just land 1 headshot mixed in. On top of this, it's worth noting with the MDR, the heavy barrel or the cleaners faction, these are going to be excellent options on this gun as well, because now you're going to be getting that 5-shot kill up close without having to land any headshots. Whereas previously it was a 6-shot kill, and heavy barrel or cleaners weren't really solid options for the MDR. And that's not all with the MDR. Another much needed change here, since this was designed to be sort of an assault rifle SMG hybrid. They reduced our aim down sight time from 300 milliseconds down to 250 milliseconds, which now matches our sprint to fire time, and it's now tied with the LVOAC as the fastest aiming down sight assault rifle in the game, as expected out of an AR SMG hybrid. So that's the MDR, and it saw a lot of love with this update. I'm definitely looking forward to checking this one out post-patch, because it should be quite a bit better than it was pre-patch. Next, let's talk about the MP5. There were several adjustments made to this as well. The first thing is in our medium damage range, so not up close, not at long ranges, but in that medium range, they increased our damage from 13 up to 14, and they also increased our overall headshot damage multiplier from 1.35 up to 1.4. And what this means is in those mid-range gunfights, you now only need 1 headshot for a 7-shot kill, whereas previously you needed 2 headshots mixed in for a 7-shot kill. And against Phantom players, it's now going to be a 9-shot kill to the body, whereas it used to be a 10-shot kill against those Phantom players. And then on top of that, this also makes the heavy barrel a much better option overall, because first off, in that medium damage range, it's now a 7-shot kill to the body with the heavy barrel, whereas previously it was an 8-shot kill. And then on top of that, in the maximum damage range, so up close and personal, if you're using the heavy barrel, you only need to mix 1 headshot in for a 5-shot kill, whereas previously it was 2 headshots mixed in while also using the heavy barrel. So some nice changes there, but that's not all with the MP5. They also increased our range values a little bit. So our maximum damage range went from 16 meters up to 18 meters, and then that medium damage range went from 25 meters up to 27 meters. And overall, that should make the MP5 at least a little more attractive, although I wouldn't say this was nearly as much of a buff as what we saw with the MDR. In either case, let's get into the sniper rifles, and for all of the sniper rifles, they increased our sprint out time, so these were nerfs to the sniper rifles. So with the M44, this went from 350 milliseconds up to 400 milliseconds. The TAC-50 went from 600 milliseconds up to 625 milliseconds, and the L115 went from 550 milliseconds up to 575 milliseconds. On top of that, with all of the sniper rifles, they just mentioned there was a small increase to your spread when shooting from the hip, so it should now be a bit more difficult to hit those no-scopes. And that wraps it up for the individual weapon balancing adjustments. However, they did make some general fixes here as well. The first thing is they improved the visual presentation of tracer fire and ammo case ejection, so both will depart more accurately from their respective weapon. And this is great news. This is something I covered in my open beta feedback for XDefiant, where the tracer would lag behind where your point of aim was, and it gave the impression that your bullets weren't going where they should be going, even though they technically were. If you went frame by frame, the point of impact was technically lined up with where it should be lining up, but there was a big visual mismatch there, which felt really awkward and it felt really bad. Now, with this update, they've actually taken care of this, and this looks much more on point with where it should. That tracer does follow your point of aim much better now, and actually notice this immediately. It feels like your shots are more accurate, even though, technically speaking, they weren't inaccurate previously. There was just that visual mismatch. Now, in addition to this, when it comes to recoil mechanics, they mentioned they adjusted how the aiming system detects player input so that recoil recovery returns to center rather than being thrown off by unintended player jitters in the heat of combat. And this is another bit of feedback that I provided a while back, where pre-patch at least, recoil recovery was an entirely useless stat if there was any player input at all. Even if you set your dead zone a little bit too low, you would never experience recoil recovery. Whereas in most FPS games, recoil recovery is always taking place and will always be recentering back to your point of origin, even if you're also actively countering recoil. So post-patch, I did the testing on this, and what I found is this is much more forgiving. So if you do have your dead zone set a little too low and there's a small amount of stick drift, you will get that recoil recovery taking place now, whereas you wouldn't pre-patch. However, if you're actively trying to control the recoil and you apply more than just that little tiny bit of input, recoil recovery still isn't recentering all the way back to your initial point of origin. So at the end of the day, this was a very minor adjustment that honestly I don't think is going to have much of an impact at all. And unfortunately, I think they would have to totally rework how they handle their recoil and their recoil recovery in order to actually get this in the place that you would typically expect with an FPS game. So when it comes to this particular area, well, I appreciate the fact that they're taking the feedback into account and they are making adjustments to compensate. Unfortunately, I don't think it was enough to really change anything here, and I'm still not going to bother at all with attachments that impact recoil recovery. In either case, the next thing they adjusted here is there was a glitch where when you respawn, you would immediately fire your gun, even if you weren't pressing any buttons. This happened a lot with the M16, I noticed. That is apparently fixed with this update. Then moving into the audio section, they just mentioned there were various graphical and audio fixes. And then for Miscellaneous, they corrected the kill screen HP value from 1 to 0 of players that killed other players post-mortem. And then on top of this, previously, players with pings greater than 150 milliseconds were kept waiting an unfun amount of time in matchmaking. They've improved the matchmaking parameters, so their ping is assessed more frequently, which should greatly reduce matchmaking wait times for them. Also, players of any ping quality can now instantly jump into the practice zone. And then finally, for the patch notes, they just mentioned they fixed various crashes. And there we go. That is going to wrap it up for today's update in XDefiant. And overall, based on what I'm seeing here so far, keeping in mind I don't have a ton of playtime, so I don't know if any new issues have appeared with this yet. But so far, based on what I'm seeing here, this was an excellent patch and some great steps forward here. I love that we saw a little bit of weapon balancing, and I love the fact that they more so were trying to bring up the weaker guns rather than nerf the more powerful guns down. I think that was the right approach to take, and I'm definitely looking forward to checking out that MDR. And then also the adjustments they made to the factions, I'm quite happy with that as well, especially that intel suit adjustment. I'm really liking what I'm seeing so far when it comes to that change. Now, of course, these are just my opinions, and I'd love to hear what you guys think about this update in those comments down below. And if you enjoyed this one, a like rating is always appreciated, and don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.